Yo, what's poppin' YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be going over the best decks in the Paldean Fates format. Now, a lot of us have been all Temporal Forces. I've been going to as many pre-releases as possible in my area and trying to collect the cards to play at the European International Championships, Orlando, locals, whatever. But we do have the last major event in the Paldean Fates / Paradox Rift standard format, Vancouver Regionals, happening this weekend. So I've gone over the best deck lists available for this format, compiled them, ranked them, etc. So if you're trying to prepare for that event, this is the way that I think the metagame is going to play out. I guess we'll all be surprised, but in the comments, if you want to let me know what your top 10 decks in this format are, let me know. Are we going to see Mew VMAX rise on top like it did in Europe? Guess we'll have to find out. That being said, let's jump into our number 10 pick. Kicking things off is a deck that's going to be losing out big time on rotation is Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. Shout out to Dom, our TSS editor, who is a Rapid Strike fanatic, who in their eyes would put this deck at number 1. Not seriously, but in their heart it's number 1. And I had to put it at number 10. I think that Rapid Strike Urshifu has seen a lot of success. It seems like it's well positioned. And while I think that Entei Valiant might do it a little bit better in this format, I'm like kind of on and off. I do think that this deck is decently well positioned to go on a deep run. As long as you're able to avoid Roaring Moon and Mew VMAX, you might just have a really good time. That being said, let's see how this deck performs at Vancouver Regionals, and then we'll come back to this list later. It's number 10 and we have to go somewhere. Could I put an Arceus deck here? Yeah, I could put an Arceus deck. I could put Entei Valiant. There's a handful of decks that I could be putting here. But you want to know what? Lists are subjective, and I think that Rapid Strike is deserving of some spot close to the top 10. Maybe it's 11th, maybe it's 12th, but today it's number 10, and that's the way that it's going to crumble. This list, unlike my Temporal Forces video, which you should totally check out, by the way, is ranked based off of my own personal feelings on the metagame, based off the results of the recent Dortmund and Utrecht and Goiânia regionals. So that's really where we're going with this. I also want to let everyone know that in the description, you can find all of our sponsors, and in the pinned comment, you could find the copy and pastable list into PTCG Live if you want to test right before Vancouver, or if you want to give these decks the proper send-off. Splashing its way at number 9 is Lost Zone Kyogre. Now, I think this is Azul's list from when he made top 8 at a recent regional championships, and I think that Lost Zone Kyogre seems like it's in a decently position as well. It's also one of those things where I could have put Lost Zone Sablezard here. I got some back and forth with the Shuffle Squad. We have our little group chat, and they're like, oh, we think Kyogre is better, and some were like, Radzard better. I've never been a true fan of Radzard. I feel like it did me kind of dirty at Portland Regionals when I played it to a top 64 finish last season. And I've never really felt the same way about the deck. So we're going to go with Kyogre. I won a league challenge with it earlier this season. And that's like, I feel like there's like these little factors that are just like, it's beyond the meta placement. But I think that a Lost Zone non-Tina deck is probably in this 9th-ish spot. And it has the ability to see some success because no one's really expecting the Kyogre. No one's really expecting the Mawile. Dragonite's about to go. So again, a lot of these decks on this list are going to be decks that are losing to rotation. Not because they're necessarily decks that are, oh, I'm only choosing decks that are losing to rotation. Like, look at the top of the list and you'll see how it could be very different, right? Like, I think it's one of those things where a lot of powerful cards are being lost. A lot of these decks are playing Battle VIP Pass, Dragonite, Rapid Strike, like, we're at the end of the format. That's typically when the most powerful combos are out there. We're about to go to the start of a format where the format's a little bit more basic, bare bones, you know what I'm saying? So sure, we're going to have a lot of cards that are going to rotate. If you're thinking about playing these for regionals, I totally think that you should pick up the cards that are going to rotate. If you are playing Vancouver Regionals, otherwise just focus on Temporal Forces. I've got a lot of questions about that lately. But yeah, I could go on and on and on and on about Lost Zone Box, whatever. We're going to go with Kyogre today. I think it's a solid pick. If you want to play Radzard, we'll give a spiritual asterisk at Radzard's also number 9. But right now, I think that Kyogre takes the spot a little bit. Blocking its way at number 8 is Block Snorlax, and I'm sure somewhere Cal Connor is yelling at me, being like, this deck's number 1. But in all seriousness, I think that this deck is probably number 8, just the way that it's positioned in this metagame. We have Gardevoir list playing Turo, we have multiple Lost Zone box decks within the top 10. If you want to beat Charizard, and if you want to beat some players that are unprepared, this is totally the deck. And maybe Vancouver Regionals is the right spot to be playing it. I think that this deck is incredibly powerful when you hit the right matchups. I feel like as a Tina player, I am cooking this deck when I play it. I feel like if I'm playing other decks, I have strategies. I could play Maron against a Snorlax deck and feel okay. That's not always going to be the case, and it always is going to depend on player skill base, and that can really wildly change round and round at regionals. So if you're thinking about playing Snorlax and you're a Snorlax expert like Calvin, maybe give the deck a whirl and try your best at matchup roulette. I mean, in all cases, we're kind of looking at matchup roulette. You don't want to play against bad matchups at a regionals, right? And anyone who says so is probably not seeing the most success at the tournament. If you want to play on hard mode, that's cool and great, but it's not necessarily what I'm looking for. When I'm looking at a regionals, I want to make a right call because I have more favorable matchups. I have the right techs against the right matchups. I think Snorlax can be that case. I just don't necessarily see it being number 1 or anything else like that. And a lot of these lists, it's hard to choose between if it's well positioned or is it relatively where it's ranked in the current metagame. I think this list is relatively ranked and where it's positioned in our current metagame compared to other decks right now. That doesn't mean that it can't win, but it does mean that I think it has a few obstacles within the current top 10 decks. We're a widespread meta where there's probably 25, 30 decks available, just like an X format, so anything could really happen when you actually think of it. Zapping it up at number 7 is Maridon. And before I dive into Maridon, I'm going to pause y'all right there. Make sure that you give this video a like. Subscribe to the channel as well. Check to see if you've subscribed. Our research shows that about 50% of y'all watching to 60% are not subscribed. So this would be a great time to help us get to 20,000 subs, which would be an absolutely milestone moment for the Shuffle Squad's channel. Back to Maridon. I feel like this deck it might as well just be Iron Hands the deck. And what I mean by that is I really think this deck is positioned as well as it is, because sure, you could be Maridon and aggressive and knock out a chien-pao or knock out a Roaring Moon or whatever. But Iron Hands EX allows us to prey on some single prize card decks or Pokemon. I could cook a Gardevoir with Maridon to some degree. It's not a 100% zero matchup, but I'd rather be seeing Gardevoir than than see a Lost Tina or a Roaring Moon or something. This deck seems okay positioned, I guess, in our current metagame, but I'm not necessarily the biggest Maridon fan. And Maridon loses a lot in the form of Flaffy and Peony going into next format. So I think a lot of people are going to be like, yeah, you want to know what? We'll give Maridon its one last chance to shine for a while. This deck spiritually grows into the future box-ish Iron Crown, Iron Hands deck. So we got that going for us. There's always going to be a way to power up Pokemon that are very powerful in most cases. So in this case, number 7, nothing too shabby. It's up there, but I just don't necessarily think it's as powerful as it once was, or what we thought it once was around the LEIC metagame. One step above its electric type kind of version is Roaring Moon, both aggressive decks that are trying to see success in this metagame. And I took a lot of inspiration from Zapdos TCG's recent run at the EU Regionals, and I like the water version of this deck a little bit more, with a lot of the Charizards, the routes, or I guess not Charizard, Charmander. You know what I'm talking about, right? We want to use Radiant Greninja and hit some little guys. Roaring Moon can hit some big guys, and that's really where I think this deck works. And I think it works a little bit tighter than the Maridon. This deck arguably is the most consistent deck in format, and that's kind of a point that I want to point out. I don't think this deck is well positioned. I think that you can win games, and you can beat a Tina turn 1 by ripping a Pokemon catcher or a cross switcher or whatever build you're playing and knocking out their Pokemon that's about to evolve. Yeah, totally, and that's why this deck is very good. when those matchups start to blossom and they get the Charizard EX out, I think that's when this is a really tough matchup or a really tough metagame spread for the Roaring Moon. So you're choosing consistency over metagame reliance, and we see a lot of that right now in our current Temporal Forces metagame in Japan, where a lot of players are playing Charizard, even though Charizard is not super well positioned. It's just an inherently powerful deck. Roaring Moon is an inherently powerful deck. And if you're a Roaring Moon fanatic, that's sick. I think Roaring Moon's an awesome deck. Like, I have a soft spot for this deck. And I think this deck is definitely my playstyle. But, it's just, like, not... Like, it's, like, again, middle of the road position. It has some okay matchups, for sure. But I definitely think you're going to have a tough road with Roaring Moon if you hit some other matchups. Like Gardevoir or, like, Charizard EX or even Lost Tina can all be difficult matchups. But if you're running hot with Roaring Moon, we ball. At the middle of our list, we have Charizard EX with Pidgeot EX. Now, Charizard used to be the best deck in format, and we had a bunch of decks that came out of the back of your binder, the back of the shoebox, and tried to counter this deck. You'll start seeing a lot of those decks in the current top 5. And sure, like, Charizard has a good Mew matchup, and I feel it does pretty good against these turbo decks. Like, there's matchups that are there, but, like, I don't feel like this deck has a strong matchup against Gardevoir. Even due to Gardevoir EX having weakness, they're primarily a single prize card deck. This deck does struggle against Lost Tina a lot because they have game plans against this deck. This deck does struggle against Snorlax. Like, there's definitely some struggles in the top 10 to some capacity. But I think the deck is incredibly well constructed. I took a lot of inspiration from Oscar Madsen's recent strong run at an EU Regionals, and this is a list that I'd feel very happy running at a region. Like, I think we have the best Charizard lists available right now. You lose to what you lose to, but you probably beat what you beat, and Charizard's incredibly consistent. So, like Roaring Moon, it's an inherently powerful deck. Not too many decks can deal with I went turn 2 rare candy and loaded up energies on my Pokemon and I'm swinging for 180 and you're likely not knocking me out, and we're going to continue down this path. I think that's incredibly strong when it comes to this Charizard deck. So keep that in mind as you're choosing your deck choice. You don't always have to choose the most well-positioned deck. See how it all goes. So right now, it's a solid pick. Maybe play it for Vancouver, maybe not, but if you're a Charizard fiend, definitely play it at Vancouver. chien-pao is up at number 4. It's actually been on a rise a lot lately, and it's due to a lot of other things we see in this list. We see Roaring Moon adding Radiant Greninja into this deck. Well, Roaring Moon is not a water-based deck, right? So having a water-based Radiant Greninja sounds good, and having Iron Hands up in this deck sounds good, and chien-pao can knock out anything it really wants. So as long as you're able to get the consistency mark just right, and you can hold your own against some big decks, this deck falls kind of like middle of the road in most matchups, where like you got some decent opportunities. You don't necessarily lose to every single matchup. Like, you have opportunities to see success when it comes to this deck, and I think that something like chien-pao, it's needed in this metagame, where like you take a little bit of a gamble if you're able to hit the right cards. Deck it is a little bit sequencing heavy. I'm not trying to say that this deck is void of skill or anything. Like, I think this deck is hard to play to some degree, but it like there are some consistency issues from time to time, like you'll find with any Battle VIP pass. Nothing more than most other decks, but I find that chien-pao gets a little bit hit more than other decks. This is a very powerful build, and I like the Paldean Fates Frigibax slightly more than I like the other 70 HP Frigibax. Fight me, sue me, I don't care. Like, it's one of those things where Frigibax is a Frigibax. We need a 70 HP one. I like the one that has Collect. But I think that this list is incredibly well constructed, incredibly well positioned in the metagame, and it doesn't really lose much in rotation. So if you're looking for a good deck to get you through rotation, either the Charizard deck that I just previously showed, most of the cards there are legal for next format, same thing with this deck. So both would be great choices right now. But I guess we'll see. We're about to make our top 3. If you haven't already put your best guesses in the comments below, now would be a great time to put your best guesses in the comments below. Lost Tina, my beloved, is at number 3. You can tell this list is honest because this is the deck that I've been non-stop playing, and this is like 59 out of the 60 cards that I've been playing at almost every single League Cup in Toronto, including the one that I went on vacation to in Costa Rica. The one change that I've made is I have cut my 4th Path to the Peak for a Spiritomb. And you want to know why? I think a lot of people are going to give Mew their final goodbye resting place in Vancouver. Long rest the Mew VMAX. The ship has sailed, Captain. We're going to go Spiritomb, and we are going to try to lock them. It's a path to the peak. It's ability lock for an ability lock card. And when it comes down to it, we got Tina V-Star, where we are a very powerful deck where we're just able to knock things out. We have decent matchups against everything. I'd rather have a slightly stronger Mew matchup because I expect a little bit more Mew in this format. Maybe I want to add a second Cramorant or something into this deck. Like, I might cook with it a little bit, but when it comes down to it, there's really not much else that you could be doing with a Lost Tina deck at this point. You could change your switch to switch cards. You could cut maybe one of the switching cards in the deck, right? Like, there's only so much you can do to a deck that is well constructed, and most people have been playing it for regionals for a while and whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think Tina is very well solved. Again, similar to the past few decks, this deck does transition very well to our next formats. Obviously, a few changes like Battle VIP Pass. Spiritomb's not going to really be a play because of Mew VMAX is not in our next format because of rotation. We'll have to see how it plays out. But right now, Tina, I think, is a fantastic choice. Arguably the choice that I'm going to play for the regionals because the deck that I'm the most comfortable with. But I do think the other two decks above it might see a little bit more play. And they're quite powerful decks. So we'll see what those are up next. In our second place, we have Fusion Mew VMAX, and this is what we just saw win the Utrecht event. We saw Owen Cameraman play this deck to another win. They won both Dortmund and this event. And in my head, I'm just like, I really hope that I did not get those brothers mixed up. But if I did, love y'all. Y'all are fantastic. But I think I got it right. I might just like mid-video pull this up to make sure that I'm not tripping. I know that when my brother used to play the game, it used to be similar where they'd get our accomplishments mixed up, and it's just, you learn to deal with it. Yeah, so I'm right. Owen Cameraman. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that last name right. They played this deck to win the Utrecht special event in the Netherlands. Mew is very powerful. Mew seems like it's very good against Gardevoir and a handful of other decks in this format. A little bit immune to Spiritomb here, but not 100% immune to Spiritomb. So when it comes to playing this deck out, I think that this deck is going to be a deck that people are going to try to put to rest. I think there might be some DTE Mew asterisks because those decks are starting to look very similar. But Meloetta and Ice Cube and all those cards are incredibly powerful, incredibly strong plays. So I think we're going to see a lot of Mew at Vancouver. Whether it's the better play or not, I think we're just going to see a lot of it just because it just won. It's the last event that people could be playing it. The following week is basically the last week that you can play it locally. And then we go into rotation, and Mew is gone forever. It's had a fantastic run, winning the World Championships. Like, there's no reason not to play Mew. If you are a Mew player or if you want to send it a final goodbye. But that leaves us to our big question. What is our number one deck? I'm sure a lot of you can already guess it. By the way, I do want to let y'all know that making comments and liking this video and subscribe to the channel, that helps boost the YouTube algorithm so more people watch it and supports the Shuffle Squad, so people like me can make more videos for all of y'all. So put that comment, guess what you think the number one deck is, and we will jump right into it and see what it actually is. Here we have it, the number one deck. Now, when it comes down to it, we do lose a lot when it comes to rotation. It might not look like it because we see Gardevoir as an EX Pokemon, but we're losing Zacian, we're losing our Gardevoir, we're losing, I mean, that's enough to really be like, okay, we lost Gardevoir, which is our main attacker in the deck. Chilling Rain one. We lost Zacian, which is our backup attacker. And post-rotation, this deck is like a Drifloon Screamtail kind of mix of a deck. This deck is, again, one of those things where people are like, I want to play Gardevoir in its full power one last time before it rotates. A lot of the top players in the game, such as Gabriel Smart, James Cox, I could go on and on, Rowan Stave now, they've all played this deck to, regionals, top cuts, and strong finishes. I fully expect a lot of the most powerful players in the game are going to be playing Gardevoir this upcoming weekend. And I think that puts it at a certain power level, right? If all the top players in the game were playing Miraidon, then maybe Miraidon would be a little bit more ranked. That's not the case here. And maybe people will play Miraidon in order to counter this. I think that Gardevoir is just pretty resilient to a lot of the counters, and with excellent play, This deck certainly has answers against almost everything. So we'll have to see how it plays out at Vancouver Regionals. But I think lists that are very similar to this are going to see a lot of success. And I think that a lot of things are... we can see lists that play Double Avery. We can see lists that play Palpad. We can see lists that, like, whatever. I think that lists like this are going to be very similar, incredibly powerful, and likely at the top tables at Vancouver, one of the smallest regionals that we have in North America so far this year. So we'll have to see how it all plays out, but right now, Gardevoir, I think it's going to be #1. Let me know what you think. I'm going to close things off, but I do want to hear your thoughts on if you think Gardevoir, is my list right? Is it wrong? Which deck should I have added? Let me hear about it in the comments. And there we have it. We have our top 10 decks in our Paldean Fates format. Do you think that we're going to see the top 5 really see success at Vancouver? Are we going to see decks like Goldango pop off and win a regionals out here in North America? We'll have to find out. I'm personally hoping to top my top 4 at Vancouver last year, where I played Arceus Duraludon, and maybe we'll see me on stream, or maybe we'll see me in the top 8 or top 4, maybe even winning a regionals at this event. Vancouver's typically been a great location for me in terms of playing, and I absolutely love the city. It's fantastic for me as a Canadian to not have to cross the border this time, just Canada soil, got something good going for me. You know what I'm saying? A little bit less things to jump through, so we'll see. If you're going to Vancouver, hopefully get a chance to meet up there. Most of the Shuffle Squad is going to be at this event from Thursday till like Monday. So I hope that we all have a fantastic time. See you all there, and best of luck at that event. I'm going to close some things out with some words from our sponsors, so check that out. Help support the Shuffle Squad. Check out our Patreon, all that good stuff. Otherwise, I'll catch up with you later. Peace out, and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.